So, my 26-year-old female wife, call her M, cheated on me, 27-year-old male, with a friend of mine, 27-year-old male. Call him J for the story's sake. A bit of backstory. We met when I was 22 at another friend's wedding. She was a good friend of the bride, and I was a good friend of the groom. They sat us at the same table, hoping we would get together. When I first saw her, I was completely taken aback by how beautiful she was. When she sat down and we began to talk, we found out we had a lot of things in common, and clicked instantly. We talked for a while, ate dinner, and then took to the dance floor. We danced and drank through the night, ending up kissing in the middle of the dance floor. When we pulled away, our friends, the bride and groom, came up to us and asked what was going on between us. They were really excited to play matchmaker. We just shrugged it off and carried on with our night. We left without exchanging numbers, but about a week later, I got a text from her asking me out. The bride gave her my number. I, of course, said yes, and it turned into a relationship. The relationship was great. Other than small arguments, we never really fought, and it was never anything serious. I eventually asked her to marry me about 2 years into our dating, and we were married less than a year later. We were married for a little more than a year when it all came crashing down on me. Just before our first anniversary, there were little things that were irritating me. She became more guarded with her phone, girls' nights became more frequent, and our sex life was almost non-existent. I brought this up on multiple occasions, but was brushed off with claims that I was letting my insecurities get to me. She continued as if my feelings and attempts to communicate did not matter to her, so I became colder and colder. I stopped giving her a goodbye kiss when I left for work, and unless it was something important, we hardly spoke. One night while she slept, I took her phone and laptop and skimmed through her texts, emails, and messenger apps, but found nothing. Then from reading stories online, I checked her car. I grabbed her keys, looked in her car, and found a second phone. I knew in that instant what was going on, but I wanted all the evidence for when I confronted her. I did not want her to say it had only happened once or something stupid like that. I looked through the phone and found only one number. I read through every message, connected the phone to my computer, printed out every message and photo, and spent the night researching divorce lawyers. I spent hours of my day in my home office, reading bios of lawyers, and found one that I liked. I emailed him, but since it was a Saturday, he was not in the office. I then wanted to know who the guy was, so I grabbed my phone, typed the number, and wanted to call and pretend I was from Spectrum, because who does not have Spectrum? But Jay's contact popped up. It took me a minute to put two and two together, but when I did, I blew up. I was yelling and cursing in my office, and my wife opened the door to check on me, but when I saw her, I told her to get out. She closed the door and went to our room. I had never cursed at my wife or raised my voice above a normal volume. All day, I never left my office. I was just silently raging, glaring at the wall. I called one of my friends, the groom from the wedding, and told him I needed to go for a drink and asked if he would come with me. He must have heard something in my voice because he asked if I was okay. I told him I was not and really needed a drink. So, without a word, I took all the printouts and left for the bar. I arrived first, ordered 4 shots of Jack Daniels and a beer. I was on my last shot when my friend, call him T, arrived and asked what was going on. I told him straight out that M was cheating. He gave me sympathy, and I asked if he wanted to know with whom. I told him it was J. He became visibly irritated because he was the one that introduced me to J. All he could say was, "I am sorry," over and over. Jay and I were never super close. We would not ask each other to hang out, but if we saw each other at a get-together, we were friendly. I told T not to mention this to anyone, as I had just found out and had not even spoken to M or a lawyer yet. I asked him not to tell his wife and to say I was having problems at work if she asked what was wrong with me. He agreed. We drank and talked for most of the night. Then I called an Uber and went home around 3 a.m. It was the first time I looked at my phone since I called T. There were missed calls and a bunch of texts, all from M asking me where I was, when I would be home, and if I was okay. I got home, and she was asleep on the couch. I just walked up to our bedroom and went to sleep. I woke up with her in the bed, so I got dressed and left the house. I went to pick up my car, went to my office, buried myself in work for the day, and went back home around 10 p.m. To my surprise, my wife was there to greet me, and she told me she had made me dinner. She asked if I wanted her to heat it up, and I told her no and went to bed. She followed soon after, asking what had been wrong with me. I told her to leave me alone and that I wanted to sleep. She kept pestering me, and eventually I snapped and yelled, Stop! I am trying to sleep. Go away." The next morning, I received an email from the lawyer asking to meet later in the day. I confirmed and got ready for my day. I went downstairs to leave, and M had made breakfast asking to talk. I made a small plate and sat down. She started by saying I had been acting differently and going on and on about how I had changed. She wanted to know why. I told her work had been stressful, and soon it would be all over. I finished up and told her I had to go. I went to my office and counted down the minutes until I could meet the lawyer. When I left, I told my assistant I was going out to lunch with a client. My wife would call my work sometimes, and left. The meeting with the lawyer went well. I handed over all the evidence I had gathered on her, and the lawyer told me, "Well, I am sorry for all that is going on, but I am happy you gathered all this information. You see, we live in an at-fault state, so your wife has no claim on most of your money." I told him I did not even think about that. I was just thinking I had to divorce her as soon as possible. He asked to keep the evidence, but I told him I would prefer if he just made copies, as I had not told my wife I knew yet and did not want to hear her excuses. He agreed and had his assistant make copies. I asked when she would be served with papers. He told me about 2 weeks. I then thanked him and left. I went home to confront my wife. When I arrived, she was not home, so I called her. No answer. I called again. No answer. I texted her, "I do not care if you are writing J right now. Get home. We need to talk." Lo and behold, she called me not a minute later, asking what I was talking about. All I told her was, "Get home now." She arrived about 15 minutes later, and I said to her, "Wow, look at that. 15 minutes. That is about the same distance between here and Jay's, is not it?" She looked at me dumbfounded. I gave her a minute to gather herself, but she was just looking at me. I said, "Well, nothing to say?" She tried to deny and gaslight me, and I let her continue on. She worked herself up and started to insult me. I slammed my fist on the table to shut her up and pulled out the evidence. I showed it from the side first and said, "Look at this mountain of things I gathered on you." Then I showed her each printout one at a time. She then told me to stop and started to cry. She tried to apologize and tell me she loved me. I said, "Honey, what happened to that energy you had before? You were so adamant about degrading and insulting me just a minute ago." She tried to hug me and tell me how sorry she was. I put my hand out and told her, "Do not touch me." She said, "Well, go to the bedroom and do whatever you like." I looked her deep in her eyes and told her, "Sweetheart, I will never touch you again. Do you want to know who else has these photos and messages? My lawyer. I am divorcing you. Now get a bag, gather your clothes, and get out of my house." This morning, I planned on doing a bit of damage control in my life, so I scheduled an appointment with my doctor to get checked for sexually transmitted diseases. I have that appointment in 2 days. Next, I started contacting all the people close to me, my father and a few friends. They have all been really supportive, offering their own advice and asking if I need help with anything. But as I have this situation under control, I declined. I then started to contact her family. I sent a text to her mom and dad, thanking them for allowing me into their family and saying I was grateful for all that they had done for me, but Em and I are getting divorced, and I would miss them terribly. Not really. They were very suffocating, and while they are great people, I'm happy I no longer have to deal with it. I then told them if they had any questions, they could feel free to ask. I did not hear back from them for a while, so I moved on to Em's sister. This kind of hurt because her sister and I were good friends, and I knew this would mess up that friendship. I texted her, "Hey, I am sorry to have to text you this, but Em and I are going to get a divorce, and I wanted you to know. I want to thank you from day one you accepted me as a brother. I will be around if you ever need anything from me." Around the time I sent that text, her parents responded back. I will type up how the conversation went. Parents, we're so sorry to hear this. What happened? Why has not Em said anything to us? Me, Em has been in at least a year-long affair. I suspect it started before our wedding. I am unsure why she has not reached out, but I think you should call her. She left the house, and I figured she would have gone to you. Parents, no, we have not heard from her. We will call her. Thanks for letting us know. Are you sure she was having an affair? Me. I am positive. I found their texts. Parents. We are so sorry that she did that. We will try and get in touch with her. After dealing with her family, I moved on to Jay's fiancée, CCE. I thought this was going to be difficult, that M and J would have conspired some master plan. But either M did not tell him I found out, or they are just idiots. I sent her a text around 2 p.m. and asked if we could meet for a coffee or something. By 2:05, she agreed and told me to meet her at some gross hipster coffee shop across from her work at 2:30. I arrived first, ordered my horrible coffee, and waited for a few minutes. She walked in, ordered hers, and came to join me. I told her, "There is no easy way to say what I'm about to tell you, so I'm just going to blurt it out. Jay has been cheating on you with my wife. It has been going on for more than a year." She was obviously shocked, so I then told her, "I only found out a few days ago. I know I should have told you then, but I had a divorce to get started and my own pity to deal with." She asked how I found out. I told her everything that is in the first post. I then asked if she wanted to see the evidence I gathered and pulled out a binder. She grabbed the binder, skimmed through the messages and pictures, and just started to silently cry. I told her she was more than welcome to take the binder, extra copies, if she wanted to confront Jay with it, or use it to see if he would lie. She thanked me, stood up, took the binder, and I told her if she needed anything from me to let me know. She nodded her head and walked out looking very defeated. I know you all told me to just stay sober, keep a level head and whatnot, but my world just came crashing down on my head. I am going to take this week to sit on my back porch, drink, smoke cigars, and blare music. After this week, I will stop feeling sorry for myself and get back to my usual schedule. On a more positive note, I've already packed up most of her things, clothes, jewelry, etc. I also threw in our wedding book and every photo that has her in it into the boxes. If and when she comes back for her stuff, I do not want her here any longer than she needs to be. Also, before you ask, no, I did not ruin her clothes. Other than a few picture frames, nothing is broken. As of right now, there is nothing else happening. I told everyone I needed to tell. My doctor's appointment is scheduled, my lawyer is hard at work to get me out of this nonsense, and 90% of her things are in boxes. I really do not know what is left. If she stays out of my hair, this might be the smoothest divorce ever. Thank you for reading. Advice is always appreciated. Since the update, I have been enjoying my pity party, drinking, and more drinking. I would say this is my first semi-sober moment since I found out about everything, and cannot really put into words how I feel. I guess numb is an accurate word. In the last update, I told you all I notified everyone, and the only one that did not respond was M's sister, with whom I was very close. Well, that night I wrote the update. I continued my drinking binge after I posted and passed out on my back patio with a bottle and a few beer cans surrounding me. I woke up to the smell of breakfast being cooked. My first thought was, oh Christ, M came back and thinks that breakfast is going to make up for what she has done. I worked myself up to a rage and threw myself out of the chair, ready for a screaming match. But to my surprise, it was M's sister. Call her W. I stood there for a moment trying to calm myself back down, but when W saw I was awake, she sprinted to me and wrapped her arms around me. She did not say anything to me. She just took my hand and led me to the table and put a plate in front of me. As I ate, she told me how sorry she was, and that when her sister showed up at her house, she just said that we were having problems and it would be fine in a few days. Then she told me that when I texted her that we were divorcing, she asked M if it would be fine. Why was he divorcing you? Apparently, M just broke down and told W everything. I scoffed and said, there is no way she told you everything, and proceeded to tell her all that happened. W told me that M had said it was a one-time thing and that I was blowing it out of proportion. I told W that I have no intention of getting back together with M, and if that is why she is here, she is wasting her time. If she is in contact with M, W needs to tell her to find a lawyer. She laughed and said she was not here for her sister. She was here for me. She told me that of course she would be there for her sister, but that her and I are friends, and she would not abandon me, especially when I did not do anything wrong. I stood up and went to her side of the table and just hugged her. I was so worried that all this nonsense going on would ruin her and my friendship, and hearing her say that made me feel so much better. W stayed with me for 2 days. Guest bedroom, you heathens. and left this morning as I'm preparing to leave for my cabin. I had it before the marriage, so M cannot touch it. I was gathering my hunting and fishing equipment. She asked if she could join me, but I told her as much as I would like that, she should probably go check in on her sister. She agreed, hugged me, and left. I am truly grateful to W for being there for me. And before any of you say she is into me, she is not. She is also 20, and that is way too young for me. It is just a really great friendship. I almost forgot to say I went to the doctor, got tested, and the results should be in on Monday. I have reached out to Jay's fiancée a few times just to check on her. She tells me she is fine and does not know what to do. I told her if she wants to meet anytime next week so she could vent, I am more than happy to listen. Good news, I got a buck. A nice fat 8-pointer. I got him on my first day out there, which I am very happy about, as it left me the rest of my time to go fishing. I only caught 2, but they were decent size, so I made one my dinner and butchered the other. I spent the rest of my stay at the cabin cleaning my deer and enjoying the views of nature. Other than a drink or two a day, I spent my trip sober as I promised my drinking was only for last week. Now on to the last few days. I got a call from my doctor, and I am all clean. It is not such a shock as Em and I have not had much passionate nights in a few months, but all the same, you can never be too sure. I reached out to Jay's fiancée but did not hear back for some time. She eventually responded back, telling me she is staying with her family right now. She did not really go into detail much, but her staying with her family can only assume, as I do, that it means it is not going so well. At least she is with family, safe, and with all the support that she could need. I told her if there is anything I can do, all she has to do is reach out. She asked me to meet and get coffee the following day, which I of course agreed to. The following day, we met at the same gross hipster coffee shop and talked for about 2 hours. We talked about everything that happened with Em and me. She wanted to know what steps I was taking, if I was divorcing, or if there was any chance I would reconcile. I told her after someone cheats, in my book, that is it. The amount of selfishness and disrespect it takes to cheat, let alone for a year, she obviously did not care for me. I asked her what her plan was. She told me she is confused about everything, and that everything she thought was truth turned out to be lies. She was not sure what her next move should be, if she should move on, or if she should forgive him. I told her, if you could forgive someone for cheating on you for that amount of time, you are a better person than me. She told me all of her family was telling her that she should forgive him and go on to get married. I told her I was going to be blunt with her and went on to say, just because it is what your family wants does not mean you need to follow along. Then I said, Jay obviously does not care about marriage and what it all means. He cheated on you, his fiancée, with my wife. If that does not show you, he is not marriage material. I told her she needed to do what she thought was right and not to have anyone other than herself make decisions that will affect her life. I told her, when I found out, all I could do was think of a way my heart could trick my brain into thinking of some way I could accept it and forgive her. But I just could not do it. I also said, I only talked to one person, but I had already made my decision and no one could change my mind. I bet when you went to stay with your family, you had a pretty good idea of what you were going to do. But you let too many people in, and they all gave their own take on it. I finished by telling her all she needed to do was to follow her gut. Her brain and heart will always lie to her, but if her gut feels something is off, 9 out of 10 times, her gut is probably right. She soon after thanked me, and we left each other and went home. The following day I got a message from my lawyer that M had successfully been served at work. I thanked him for all his work, especially in the time frame he got it done. Not long after that, W called and told me M had not left her room all day, and she was sobbing in bed. I told her M was served and is probably realizing how badly she messed up. W asked me how the cabin was and if I got anything. I told her everything I did and how my time was there. We talked for a moment and hung up. After, I prepared myself and my house for my wife's explosion. I figured if there was any time she would, it would be soon, now that she has been served. So now I am waiting patiently, biding my time. I have Advil on standby for what I can only assume is going to be a headache. I told my friend, and he agreed if M showed up, he would race over to be a witness just in case all else fails. About an hour or so after I posted last, I was waiting for M to show up at the house and go ballistic. I had no real reason to think she would do anything, but given everything that has happened, I never really knew the woman. I went around to all the cameras I had up and made sure they were working properly, both the ones inside and outside. I called my friend, letting him know that M was served today, and if she shows up, he needs to get to my house as soon as he could. I am not going to jail because of this woman. Turns out I was right, because M had shown up at the house, banging on the door and screaming to let her in. I immediately called my friend and W to get here because M was beating down my door. She was cursing my name, begging me to let her in, and calling me every name in the book. She was asking how I could be so heartless. Blah, blah, blah. She was not wrong because the entire time she was screaming and banging on the door, all I could do was laugh. I then wondered why she did not just walk in. She still had keys, at least to my knowledge. When my friend showed up, she was still screaming and cursing, so he started to record on his phone and stayed in his truck. But this idiot brought his wife with him, M's friend. So she got out and tried to calm her down. She walked up to M, put her arms around her, and tried to get her to talk to her. EM then slapped her across the face, screaming at her to mind her own business. That made my friend, who now has a video of it, call the police. She continued to scream and curse until the police got there. When they did, she tried so hard to play the victim. One of the two officers walked up to her, and she started to cry and tell them I hit her and threw her out of the house. My friend and his wife had told the other officer that when they came to the house, she was yelling and banging on the door, so they could not confirm that I did not do what M said I had done. After that officer was done talking with my friend and his wife, he came to my door. When I opened it, M said, "There, that is him. He hit me. I want him arrested." He started to put me in cuffs when I told him, "I can prove that she is lying to you. All I need is my phone." The officer stopped and told me to show him the view from the outside cameras. After reviewing the video, he apologized for jumping to conclusions and automatically assuming I was the one in the wrong. I told him I did not fault him, but he then told me that they received 15 calls total from my neighbors. Apparently during M's rant, she had screamed out, "He hit me!" So the officers had already made their judgment. After having to deal with the police for about half an hour, M ended up being put in cuffs and charged with disturbing the peace, public intoxication, and driving under the influence. As the police took M to the car, W showed up and came to me asking what had happened. I showed her the video on my phone of it all. The officer then came up to me to hand me the case number and some other paperwork. W started to ask questions about the charges, so I just went back inside. W followed soon after and sat next to me. She told me she left her house for 10 minutes to run to the store, but when she got back, M was no longer in the living room, so she thought M had gone to bed after drinking too much wine. W and I talked for a while, and she asked me if she could stay the night. I said she was welcome any time. She told me that M had to spend the night in jail. I do not know why, but they could bail her out in the morning. She told me that when I went back inside, she called her parents to let them know what was happening and to see if they could bail M out because W does not have that kind of money. We had a beer together and soon went to bed. When I woke up in the morning, W had already left to meet with her parents. I have not heard from MW or their parents, but I do not think it is a fun conversation. Before my wife was served, I had told a friend it was happening and told him to be on standby just in case she came over. I wanted him there as a witness. Later in the day, my lawyer told me she was served at work, and a few hours later, my wife was banging on my door. I called my friend as soon as I heard her. I also called W and told her she should come over because her sister was beating on my door. Soon after I got off the phone, my friend arrived and started recording my wife's tirade from his truck. He had brought his wife for some reason, and she got out to try and calm my wife down. She ran up to her and tried to pull her away, but my wife turned around and smacked her, telling her to stay out of her business. When my wife hit her, he stopped recording and called the police. It took about maybe 10 minutes for them to get there. When they did, my wife flipped a switch and started saying I abused her. When I stepped outside to talk to the cops, he immediately started to put me into cuffs until I told him I have cameras that show she is lying. He stopped and allowed me to pull out my phone, and he watched the entire video showing all that she said was just one big lie. She started going off again, and the cop arrested her and had her take a breathalyzer. As they took her to their car, W pulled up asking what was happening. She came and stood next to me, and when the cop brought the paperwork and apologized to me for jumping to conclusions, I just told him I understand. It is no big deal. Then I went inside. W stayed behind to get the full story from him, and soon after joined me. She asked to stay over because M would have to stay overnight in jail. When I woke up, W was already gone, and that pretty much sums up my last update. I've not heard from M since that night, but my lawyer was contacted by hers, letting him know he will be representing M. Finally, we can start this process. I also reached out to Jay's fiancée Key to see if she has any news on her front. We only texted back and forth, but she told me she has kicked him out of her house and had her father and brother pack up all his things and drop it off at his house. She told me her dad and brother wanted to beat him, but she asked them not to, and that she just wants to put all this behind her and move on. She thanked me for checking on her and tells me her close friends are there for her when she needs them. I sent her the link to my Reddit page so she can see all the support you all give to me and to her. On Friday, the moment I got off work, I raced home. My plan was to go back to my cabin for the weekend. When I arrived, W was in my driveway. She wanted to grab her sister's things and had a list of what my wife expected. I skimmed through it, and all but one thing was already in a box or sitting in my garage waiting to be picked up. I told her I am not transporting or touching anything that is in here. I'm not going to be responsible if M wants to claim I destroyed her stuff. I told her I would pay for a moving company to come and pack and take all her things for her, because right now I'm going to my cabin and do not have the time to deal with M's nonsense. She said that would be great and hoped I have fun. She took a box of M's clothes and put it in her car. She then turned to me and asked if she could tag along this time. I said, sure. Why don't you go back home, drop off the box, and pack a bag for yourself? By the time I went to the store and packed up the truck, she was pulling up. I locked up my house and took off to the cabin with W. The weekend went really well. The last time I was up there, I realized what a gem that place is. It has a beautiful view and is completely secluded, so I do not have to deal with any people. It is a place you can truly breathe in and relax. On Monday, I called a moving company, and by Tuesday, 3 guys in a big truck pulled up and started loading. I had every box open and recorded as they closed the box and picked it up. I took pictures of all the furniture and recorded as the movers loaded it. I thanked them all for tolerating me and tipped them each an extra $50. I then sent all the recordings and pictures to my lawyer and carried on with my day. The house seems empty but also clean without all her things here. When I started this process, my lawyer told me not to get rid of anything that could be considered shared, so I put most of the furniture in a storage unit. I have been sleeping in the guest room since she left, so up until I started writing this post, I have been buying all new furniture. I will most likely be keeping the majority of it in the garage now that I have the space. I will not be keeping the house even if I win it in the divorce. It holds too many now bad memories. So we left off with M being arrested after striking my friend's wife and telling the police I assaulted her. After showing them the video of all that happened, I was let go, and she was taken to jail on a variety of charges. I did not hear from M for a while until her lawyer reached out to mine, letting him know that he would be representing M and doing the lawyer-to-lawyer formalities. I reached out to Jay's fiancée asking what was happening and found out she had kicked him out. Her brother and father took all his things to Jay's new place. I planned on going to my cabin after work but found W in my driveway waiting for me. She needed to pick some things up for her sister. After telling her I would not be touching any of her things, I told her I would pay for a moving company the following week. W asked if she could come up to my cabin with me that time, and I agreed, mostly due to everyone telling me she might be needing a break from her sister, and the last time she asked me, I said no. I documented everything with the movers, making sure she could not claim I broke something she deemed as special, and sent everything to my lawyer. That is pretty much all that had happened in the last post, and now the update. A few days after the movers took her things to M, my lawyer received some paperwork saying I damaged her things and demanding I pay her $1,500 or she would be taking me to court over it. My lawyer sent hers all the videos and pictures, asking exactly where the damages were that she claimed I made. He told me all this does is tell the judge how unhinged she is, and it might be a headache now, but when it is time for court, this will all be perfect evidence. I do not think her lawyer was ready for how meticulous I am, and that I will photograph and document everything. When I found out about my wife's affair, I was, for some reason, pulled to this page and read all of the horror stories about the things these people's former spouses did to them. I absolutely refuse to be another one of those stories. I have prepared myself for almost every outcome and accusation she could make. I would not put anything past her at this point. M has called me once every other day, but I never pick up. If she leaves a voicemail, I do not bother listening to it. I just send it to my lawyer. Every time I send my lawyer something, he always tells me, "You are a lawyer's dream. You listen to everything I say. You gathered a mountain of evidence on your own. I have yet to have a client that has done so well." I was not exaggerating when I said he says that every time, but it also puts a smile on my face every time. Getting that reassurance from him that I am doing everything right makes me feel a little bit better about this whole situation. About 2, maybe 3 weeks ago, my lawyer told me that we have enough evidence to bury her outside of court, and if it fails, it would look good on us for trying. So we set a date, a week ago, to meet in a neutral lawyer's office. Before we met, he told me no matter what, do not react to anything that M might say, and that everything we do will be recorded for a judge to read if it goes to court. We arrived in the early morning and went into the office. To my surprise, she was already there waiting with her lawyer. We walked in, and the lawyers started greeting each other. M and I sat there silently, waiting for what was going to happen. M's lawyer started by asking what we had to offer. Mine scoffed and said, "With the mountain of evidence of the infidelity and M's inappropriate behavior after, the only thing we will offer is half of the selling price of the home and half of the savings account. That is more than any judge would award you. Basically, what you came into the marriage with, you will be leaving with." Then he looked directly at M and said, "If you decide to go to court, I will put every message making you read it all out loud. Then I will put every photo up for all in court to see, censored," but he did not say that at the time, "and make you describe in detail what you are doing in each photo. Then I will bring up your recent charges and play the video that was taken that night." M started to tear up, looking at me, asking if there was anything she could do to make this right. I said, "You have been cheating on me since before our wedding. All I can prove is a few weeks before the wedding, but I expect it was much longer. There is nothing at all you could possibly do to make me forget or forgive you for what you have done. Sign the papers. It is more than you deserve, and I want to be done with this whole sham you created." She cried obnoxiously for 15 minutes, having to excuse herself to the restroom. When she returned, she was still in tears, but signed the papers and walked out not long after. So in about a month, everything will be filed, and all I will have left to do is sell the house. It has been a little over a year. For the most part, I am doing well. I spend most of my weekends at my cabin, either hunting, fishing, or just enjoying the view. I sold the old house and made a pretty penny with the sale of it due to the upgrades I did and the current state of the housing market. I had to split the money with my ex, but honestly, I would have paid more to get her out of my life. I used part of the money from the sale of my house to purchase the property next to my cabin, and now it has tripled in size. Since the divorce, I have only seen her once, and she looked nothing like she used to. When we first met, I could not take my eyes off her. Now, I almost did not recognize her. It almost made me laugh out loud. Call me mean or cynical, whatever. After what she put me through, she deserves worse. She mostly just looked at the ground while her parents and I talked. She did not even say hello or goodbye. Her parents tried feeling out if M and I would try again someday. They were not too subtle, but I shut them down with an iron hammer. I told them while I understand their position, I will never be with someone with such low morals and someone so weak-willed. W and I still hang out. She's worried about me. She does not say as much, but I can tell by the way she looks at me. She has tried to persuade me to get into dating a few months after the divorce was over, but I am not really interested. She said just to try, even if it is just to get out there and put out some feelers, but it all seems exhausting. Right now, I am perfectly fine being by myself. I like my life how it is right now. Of course, I would have preferred to stay married if my wife had been faithful, but that is not the case. Once a month, W and I go out to my cabin to hang out. She likes to go hiking throughout my property when it is not hunting season. The rest of the money I got from the sale of my house I used as a down payment for a rundown house, and I have been spending all my time outside of work dedicated to fixing it. I spent the summer and some of the fall doing work outside. The reason I bought this crap hole was because there is a pool here. Sadly, there was a crack in the concrete work which caused a leak, so I spent quite a lot of time fixing it, which was not easy. W has been helping out a lot. She has put quite a few plants around to make the house look not haunted and more inviting. At the end of September, we started working on the inside. She helped with that as well because apparently my taste in furniture is gross. I do not really mind. She makes it look nice, so I cannot really complain. I only have the basement left to do, and it is such a relief that I am almost done. After I fix up a room, W comes in, paints, and decorates, so it makes things so much easier. J and his fiancée CE have split up. She, like me, could not look past the cheating, so she called off the wedding and kicked him out for good. She and I have gotten closer. She comes by to hang out with W and me. She has even helped W decorate. They drink wine like it is water, so I have to have bottles in stock. I was planning to do a bar in my basement, so I think I will put one of those wine refrigerators in there as well. Other than a friend or two, W and K have been the biggest support I have.